Kia ora and welcome to my podcast. I'm Shannon Jefferies and this is 360 Degrees of Health, about chats and thoughts on living your most abundant life, all things health, spirituality, healing and yoga. So this is podcast number 2, and if you did listen to number 1, I spoke quite a bit about my past and how everything sort of manifested in my early youth and some of the feelings that came up for me during that time. And I used the word quite a bit in my first podcast, turning point, and a few parts of my story led to me changing the way I viewed my health and viewed my life and the way I could potentially get myself well. And one of the big points, one of the big parts of the story for me was my near-death experience, or where I stopped breathing at the age of 13. I had my fallopian tube and my ovary, or my fallopian tube twisted up on my right side and went septic, and I actually stopped breathing for a little while, and I had that classic near-death experience where I saw the light, I saw my life flash before me, or important things flash in front of my eyes. And I was really young at the time, only 13, and, I couldn't attach what that meant, but it gave me a real sense of that there's something bigger out there, there's something bigger than us. And with that's not that I could articulate that at the time, was the sense of that there's a little bit of magic or a little bit of a miracle or a peace out there beyond the very constraints of our physical body or what we see in our day-to-day life or what we're led to believe we're capable of within our body. So that was an early seed that was planted, and I just kind of put it to the side because I couldn't make head or tail of it or know if it had any significance at that young age. But it did plant the seed of spirituality in my life. And it definitely shaped how I viewed other things as I got a little bit older. And I would have been about 15 or 16 when I was introduced to Louise Hay. A lot of people would know her. She's, a force to be reckoned with in the mindset and metaphysical world of how we can talk to ourselves and the way we can think and bring things into reality. So that was another big moment in my life. I actually listened to her book on a little tape in my Walkman while I was in hospital. And it was almost felt fraudulent because I didn't believe any of the stuff that was being said, but I knew that if I just listened, that it would sort of seep into my being, and it really did. So that, again, at the tender age of 15 or 16, I was introduced to that. I didn't use it actively. I didn't know what it was doing, but I persevered because I had nothing else to be doing. I was in hospital. So I let that be there and listened to her You Can Heal Your Life book on tape that my auntie bought me. So that also planted a few seeds that came into my life a wee bit later. So I went through and got the lupus diagnosis, as I explained last week, and accumulated an army of doctors and medication. So by the time I was 17, I'd had a lupus diagnosis for a year. And we worked really hard as my family was so amazing in that time, and we worked really hard at getting me to balance or to have some sort of feeling of life at that age. And what came about by doing that is a doctor for nearly every organ and every system of my body. So in the medical system, and I'm not bagging it by any means, but in the medical system, there's a specialist for each part of your body. And the doctors, so if I had lupus is a real systemic thing, which just means that it can affect any one part of your body. And I was like collecting symptoms. So at one point I had trouble breathing and had pericarditis. So there was a cardiologist and respiratory issues. And I was having what we thought was actually seizures at the time. So I had a neurologist. Extreme vertigo, so a neurological physiotherapist, extreme abdomen discomfort and inability to digest food, So I had specialists that actually investigated through my abdomen, lots of surgeries, and exploratory investigations through the bowel and the abdomen, where I was continuing to have a lot of pain and discomfort. So people that specialised in different parts of my reproductive systems, had a gynecologist, and people that were helping out with digestion, had some of my bowel removed, and just operation after operation. So at a very young age, felt like a bit of a pincushion, and had collected quite the impressive range of medications that I was on, and was actually starting to notice that the side effects of some of the medications were just as bad as the symptoms of my disease, which is a wee bit depressing. And then also starting to feel frustration because my week started to look like a calendar of doctor's appointments as I made my rounds, because I wasn't very well, made my rounds through the specialists, and none of them talked to each other. It was quite an interesting phenomenon. So my cardiologist would treat me for my things going on with my heart and give me a whole lot of medication, and then I'd go to my neurologist and they would give me medication for what they thought was epilepsy at the time, and so forth and so forth. So I was on medications, and it was becoming quite clear to me, and no fault of their own, because they're all busy people, and basically what they're doing is trying to keep you alive. A doctor is there to keep you alive, and so there's no person overlooking your treatment per se. And this was a wee bit, as a person that is holistic and there is a systemic disease in my body, it became really frustrating. And I know many of you that are listening will go, yeah, I know what you mean, because that you've experienced the same thing. And so I kept going, and I even went through some mild chemotherapy at times to suppress my immune system because it was just playing up so much. So that added to the list of side effects. And some of those side effects are reversible, and some of those side effects are lifelong. So accumulating all these things in my body and starting just to feel like I had no control over my body. I'd handed that responsibility over to other people, and whether that was the doctors, who at that time in my life I gave like godlike status to the doctors. I would have believed absolutely everything they say, because they've studied a long time to deserve the title of doctor, and they do save lives. They are everyday heroes, but they're not the boss of our bodies, so they don't know how we feel. Their bottom line is that they're keeping us alive and not thinking of the whole picture of your life, of what you want, your dreams and aspirations and energy, and that sort of 360 degrees of health that you desire to have a fulfilled life. So kind of started spiraling into a little bit of I wouldn't say depression. I didn't probably get what you'd call depressed, but quite low in mood and quite despondent, because I'd given away that control of my body to other people and invested that in thinking that they were responsible. I gave them that responsibility to make me well. And it took a while to realise that it's no one else's responsibility to make me well. It's no one else's responsibility to make me happy, or sit down at the end of the day and go, what would Shannon like tomorrow? Because the only person that can do that is me. The only person that can do that for ourselves is us. And so when I suppose, got into that victim mode for quite a while, and then enjoyed, I'll admit, enjoyed being there. It's a cozy place. And the saying, your comfort zone is dangerous, is really true, because I was comfortable being looked after. I was comfortable letting other people tell me how to live my life. That was easy. But then the results of it was that my life was not fulfilling, and that I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do. So I drew a line in the sand. I decided that I loved helping people and I wanted to be a nurse. And for me to be a nurse, I had to go and get a degree, which requires a certain amount of health. And I was so determined that I wanted to help people because of the way that nurses had helped me throughout, being someone who was maybe 8 or 9 when they started having hospitalizations through to health. And the loving care that I got from nurses at that time really inspired me, or I wanted to be that for someone else. So I had to draw a line in the sand, and I'm not going to say that this was smart, but I actually stopped taking medication, and I don't advocate that. I don't say that that's the right way. It was just where I was mentally. I decided that, okay, I'm going to stop taking a whole heap of this medication because it's not doing anything for me. I later found out that was extremely dangerous and that I actually could have, died because I'd stopped taking things that my body was used to being on. Luckily, I didn't have that effect. So it was my desperate way of taking control back. I probably should have done it under medical supervision. But I went and I naughtily flushed some stuff down the toilet and didn't take it, and went, there's got to be a better way for me at this young age with so much potential and so much desire to help people to get well. And this triggered my lifelong passion for figuring out what makes me well and figuring out what makes me feel best longest. And in yoga, we call that our tapas, our fire or our motivation. And so I was very motivated at this time in my life on a crusade to find wellness. So I decided that it was very important to be very responsible with what you put into your body. So the medication that I was taking that was starting to make me feel very unwell was the first thing I decided not to put into my body. And then I decided that everything we put into our body, whether it is a supplement or food, so nutrition or a medication, that you're working for the body or you're working against it. And so I was kind of lucky because my body's so sensitive. So because of the lupus, it's like if something goes into my body that doesn't like it, it's like an alarm bell going off. And I actually view that now as a pretty big gift, because when I eat something, and it might be something that you'd consider even healthy, but my body doesn't agree with it, I'll instantly get a sore stomach. I'll instantly have digestive discomfort or even inflammation in the body. Like systemically, I'll get a swollen face, I'll get a massive headache, I'll be fatigued, I want to sleep for a week. So that's a gift, because then I can figure out quite quickly what it is that my body needs and what is good for it. But I think everyone can get to this space, because I worked really hard at figuring out what the body needed. And it started, I started because I wanted to get well enough to do my nursing degree. And I went on the liver cleansing diet. Some of you may have heard of it. I think it's Susan Cabolt's book on the how to cleanse your liver. It was the first nutritional book I ever read. And it was the first of like many, because I was just like, felt the benefits really quickly, because my liver had been overloaded with medication that had been going on some sort of liver cleansing eating plan was just beneficial, really obvious results quickly. And that made me very interested in what was in each veggie and what was in each fruit, or what was completing the nutritional circle for me, and why I was feeling better on that and what didn't work. And then I took it one step further, because nutrition's one thing we consume, but, harking back to the stuff that I'd sort of glazed over with the Louise Hay, we also consume what we think about ourselves, or what how we view ourselves, and what we say to ourselves is another way we can feed the body or damage it. So I was a young lady, and I had lost trust in my body, because it had been, broken. It wasn't working properly for a very long time. And so I went from, I kind of hated myself. I felt broken. I felt incomplete. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my body. From a very long time, had handed over that control of looking after my body to medical professionals. So that continued me taking control was actually taking control in the way I talk to myself. And so many young, and I'm just going to say people, but, often young ladies have a really low self-worth. And I did struggle with that a lot. And I had to start, like I said, feeling a bit fraudulent with my affirmations, because looking yourself in the mirror and telling yourself you love yourself and you're worthy of all the effort it takes to get well is actually a really difficult thing to do when you're, for anyone. But when you're young and insecure, that was huge for me. But I did it. And what did I have to lose? I was in a really dark place. So what did I have to lose? I was just going to do it and see how it worked. So I'd write affirmations down. There were so many. I would look at myself in the mirror. I would repeat them. I would say them to myself. And as I said, felt totally fraudulent, a little bit weird. But I kept doing it day after day. And it did. It slowly turned the way I thought about myself, the way I thought I should be treated, started changing. And I had that self-worth to put in the effort to be well, to be complete, to be whole, and start noticing what I notice about myself and being intuitive and honoring my intuition, because it's the wisdom that comes with our body. And so slowly but surely coming out of that victim mode, empowering myself with these tools to look after myself, and slowly being able to walk into doctors' rooms and tell them with authority what my body was doing, tell them what I needed, or having the confidence to say no to the treatment plan they'd put in place for me because I knew deep down it wasn't helping. So that helped me a lot. And I didn't always get supported by, X, Y, and Z doctors. And one funny story which led me to my love and of yoga was that I was being treated for epilepsy because I was having absences. And at that stage, this is 20 years ago, absences which they thought was absent seizures or petite mal epilepsy. And I just knew deep down that it was related to my lupus. It wasn't another label. It wasn't another disease. It was my body short-circuiting, basically, overloaded, so inflamed, so medicated, so under-exercised, just so many things going wrong, a vicious cycle of getting sicker and sicker, that I knew that it was my brain just stopping and, giving up. And so I said to the neurologist and the cardiologist who were treating me and medicating me at the time, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take medication. And they laughed and then said, well, I can't guarantee your health if you're not going to take our treatment, and we don't see any point in treating you any further if you're not going to take our medications. And the neurologist said to me, look, if you're going to go be a hippie about it, there's a little bit of research showing that yoga is helping rewire people's brains to a huge benefit and, kind of miraculous. And it was down to inversion work, which is the upside down work. So like in yoga, you go upside down a lot, downward facing dog, even your forward fold. But I think they were meaning more of the handstand work as well. And if you can get yourself into a yoga studio and get well enough to do that, then, maybe you'll have some results. So me and my mum, my trusty mum, who's been with me the whole journey, signed me up to a beginner's yoga course. One of the best things that I ever did. We walk up the stairs to this yoga course, really having not really a clue what we're doing. I think it was my mum's first yoga class as well. And I was really sick at the time, like unwell, not able to work, just all sorts going on. So, I hung out with mum a lot. So she took me along to this yoga class, and it was, again, another huge discovery for me, another huge point in my life where I learnt that we are in control of our bodies, of what we consume, of our thoughts. And then this introduced me to breath work. So I felt instantly better from doing yoga. I wasn't physically fit or strong or anything at the time. I barely walked up the stairs successfully. But I went into that yoga class and I stretched my fascia. And, I know now that the work I did with my fascia in that class was pivotal to the inflammation I was experiencing and the pain and the discomfort I was experiencing in my joints and my abdomen. And then married with the breath, which is what yoga is all about, marrying movement and breath, just coordinated the breath with my movement, and it calmed down my nervous system. So there's no way you can tell me that someone of my age, I can't remember, it's a long time ago, whether I was 16, 17 or 18 when I found yoga, but I was in my late teens. And, I had all that invasive surgery, all that invasive exploratory medical investigations to get my diagnosis, and then, just given a whole list of medications that I didn't have anxiety. I absolutely was suffering from fear of the next step from fear of living, because I was so scared of what was next, or what the doctors were going to say next, or that my prognosis was not great. That I probably wasn't going to have a family, and all those things were laid out in front of me. So I was very fearful, and fearful of my own body. I'd let that happen. So going into a yoga class and being really mindful and noticing the subtle things in life was such a beautiful gift, a way of taking that responsibility for my own health and realizing that, our bodies are phenomenal. They can heal without a lot of the intervention that we think they need. So I was now tooled with the gift of nutrition, the gift of exercise, and exercise that wasn't counterproductive to my nervous system and my joints, because I had to be careful with my joints with lupus. So yoga was like that answer that I'd been looking for, that gentle, rinsing out, compression. There's a little bit of cardio there's a little bit of strength work. So literally moment by moment, gaining my strength and my confidence back on that yoga mat. And I just don't even know where that yoga instructor went. Her name was Leela. If you're out there, Leela, 20 years ago in town on Cuba Street, I took your class and it was life-changing. So give thanks to that beautiful instructor who helped me. And I went on to do a second or a third, maybe, beginner's course, one after the other, and ended up being that yoga geek with the key to the studio that used to let myself in at like 6 o'clock in the morning before classes even ran, and use their beautiful facility to do my yoga before I was at work, and do the things that I needed to do, and then come back at evening and do yoga, because it just made me feel so good. I used to do the classes in the evening. And before I knew it, I was doing handstands. Before I knew it, I was doing the advanced poses. And I'm not saying that I was doing the advanced poses because I wanted to skite, but it was more that it just goes to show how quickly we can transform our bodies from being the girl that's hooked up to a drip with chemotherapy on my hospital bed to being the girl hanging upside down in a yoga studio with a new lease on life. So the next chink to the real the wellness of myself, or getting to that space where I almost feel invincible, was coming across Reiki. So I got a lot of massage around this time. I started really looking after myself and finding that the self-care and the giving back to my body just paid back no end, and the energy and the strength that I could have. So I started getting massages, and got beautiful massages up here in Kapiti. Actually, I didn't even live here at the time. Lovely lady called Terry was massaging me, and in return, I was massaging her horse, and because I'd become a massage therapist over this time as well, and I was an equine massage therapist by this stage, and some of the horses that I was massaging were very sensitive because they were athletes, and some of them were racehorses, and I was giving energy healing, and I'd learned of a guy that had been doing energy healing on me, how to give horses energy healing, but it didn't have a label or a name. It literally was energy healing. Beautiful modality. And I was healing this horse of my massage therapist, and she said, "Are you doing Reiki?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm doing energy healing." And she says, "It looks like you're doing Reiki." And so I was really intrigued, because I always wanted to give my energy healing a little bit of a channeling or a name, so that I could, understand it and get more depth and understand it more. So she said, "My mum's a Reiki master, and, why don't you go talk to her?" So I got to know her mum, and that was my Reiki master, Lee Cook. I honour her. She's also here out in the Kapiti Coast in New Zealand. And so I did my Reiki 1 certificate. I did it for horses. So I had this want to heal horses and help people still. So I did this Reiki 1, and I was driving back from Kapiti to Lower Hutt, and I was stuck in traffic. It was back in the days where the traffic was terrible. And I was stuck in traffic, and I was thinking about the learnings of the day. And I was excited because it was huge. And I thought to myself, maybe this Reiki can heal me. I was still in quite a bit of discomfort. I was still dealing with the balance of life and fatigue. And I thought maybe this Reiki could heal me. It almost sounded too good to be true. And I thought, do I believe in miracles? Do I believe in a little bit of magic? Maybe I could heal myself. And that night, I lay on my bed, lay the hands on myself, and began the journey of healing myself energetically. And I almost didn't, dare to think it, because I'd been told no over and over again. But I thought maybe I could Reiki myself a baby, because I so dearly wanted to be a mother by this stage. I was like, maybe this Reiki could heal my reproductive system or balance out my hormones, because they'd been playing up. And I had endometriosis and the talk of polycystic ovaries on top of the lupus. And I was like, maybe I can balance this out for myself. And that was the beginning of me, again, taking responsibility and control of my energy. That seed had definitely been dropped in yoga. It's definitely part of yoga, because Reiki is very close to the yoga modality in a lot of ways. But this was next level for me to channel it and move it and feel the subtleties of my chakras. And get to know my body on that even more subtle level, that really internal level. And I did. I've got 4 beautiful babies, and I attribute a lot of that to the Reiki that I learnt. I had them naturally, and I went on to do Reiki 2, which was even more exciting, because you can become more, I don't like to use the word powerful, because it's not my energy. It's just learning to use the energy for yourself and others, but it gives you more tools. And then I went on and did my Reiki Masters, so I could, I was so curious, because it was something that I didn't believe in fully when I started. And the results proved to me that it was like a miracle, and that you could do this. And so I'm more and more curious each time I overcome a hurdle through the use of this energy. I was like, I'm so curious. I want to know more. So I kept going until it was a Reiki Master. And, it's a beautiful gift as well, because I can teach other people to be Reiki attuned and heal themselves. So these huge modalities come into my life at different times, and, everything happens for a reason. But it was me gaining control. And I just like to, put out there and share with people that there has to be a time where you go, I'm going to take responsibility for me. That 360 holistic responsibility, physically, mentally, what we consume mentally, what we say to ourselves, what energy we give ourselves and then project out into our world. It mirrors back, it magnetizes back to us and gives us our reality. And I'm not saying don't use the medical route, but be holistic as well. What we have to deal with medically is sometimes not all our decision, or our destiny is not always in our hands. We can't control everything. But then looking after ourselves, extra careful when we have to use medications or we have to be in hospital and all those things. Because I've definitely, as you've heard through the last 2 podcasts, had both, and they've both helped me. But do believe in magic, do believe in miracles. If you knew me back when I was a teenager, you wouldn't believe how healthy and energetic I am now. So there's magic out there, and we can heal ourselves. So before I sign off, I just want to tell you that you have the ability to heal yourself. Everything we need is within us. And just trust your body, listen to your body, and attune to it. And it slowly but surely whispers to us what it needs. And you can become very intuitive of what needs to go in and out. So thank you for joining me in my second podcast. Really looking forward to fleshing out some of those aspects we talked over in the coming weeks, and also talking to other people about what's helped them with their health and their full circle of health and abundance. So we look forward to talking again in 2 weeks' time for episode number 3. Namaste, yogis.